Good morning to everybody. This is an, I hope, interesting panel. We're gonna have together in this 1 hour discussion with title, To What Extent Scientific Data Drive Political Decisions. We're gonna have with us Dr. Eva Kaili. She's a member of the European Parliament since 2014. She's also the chair of the Future of Science and Technology panel, and she's promoting innovation. We will have with us also Professor Clemente, professor of otorhinology. He is the president of the Portuguese Institute of Tabacology since 2007, and somebody who has dedicated a big part of his scientific life concerning smoking and harm reduction. We hope to have soon with us Professor Emil Toldy-Schedel, who is the General Director of the St. Francis Hospital in Budapest, who is not online yet. So I would like to welcome all of you. And just to be able to start, let me have some slides to put the initial questions and the initial idea on which we're going to discuss. To what extent really scientific data drive political decisions? As you see in Greece, we are really good on banning smoking. We banned it for the first time in 1856, prohibition for within state buildings on the need to prevent accidents. I'm not really sure what prevent accident means, but it is the oldest ban I have found. It took us quite a few years before banning smoking in all closed places. And the main discussion we had the last year about the concept of reduced harm is based on nicotine, on different ways to get nicotine, which we know that it is the biggest part of addiction, and at the same time, it doesn't seem to be the biggest or a major contributor to the cigarette-induced atherosclerosis. At least in Greece, we know and we have published that it's quite impossible to get an MI if you are not a smoker in young age. About 93% of male with an acute MI were smokers and 78% of women. And we know the biggest problem is that even after an acute coronary syndrome, about more than half of them, 60%, resumed smoking in 1 year. Why is that happening? Because smoking cessation is always a quite complicated project. We got an excellent drug in like varenicline, in which, as you see, we got at 12 weeks, half of them being able to stop smoking because physical addiction was able to be contained. The biggest problem and what we have to deal in reality is that these patients which were willing to participate in this trial at 52 weeks, only 20% had stopped smoking versus 7% in placebo, because smoking contains also a big psychological addiction, and that's something, at least today, in the everyday medical practice, we are not yet so good at being able to contain. The US has a special category for tobacco products being regulated by FDA, and all new products that want to come into the market in the United States must have a file which shows that they prevent public health better than existing ones. And FDA expects a substantial dossier with chemistry analysis, toxicological studies, clinical studies, perception and behavioral studies, and post-market program. IQOS was the first in the last years that was ever through this system and got the authorization to be able to be sold in the United States after the whole file was checked. And then they got also a claim about risk reduction and about reduced exposure to chemicals. So our question is, what does Europe do on this subject? This from an article I wrote in the e-journal of cardiology of the European Society of Cardiology. Should Europe follow FDA's example? EMA has not any regulatory point on smoking. Should we have something unified for whole Europe? For the moment, each country sets its own prerequisites, and each country is trying to make their own moves concerning if they will characterize any product on any part as reduced harm or not. So what are we going to do as Europe? As Europe Health Union, we know we got Europe's beating cancer plan for the next year. And we know also that the concept of harm reduction was not present in the beating cancer plan. So it will be interesting to see your position and to see what we can do better as Europe on this part. Dr. Kaili, would you like to comment?
Doctor, not yet, but I'm moving to this direction as I finish my PhD. So it was very interesting, your presentation, and thank you for having me. I'll just try to describe a few things of the ongoing procedures in the European Parliament that I think you might know, but I believe it's important to mention at this point. So first of all, we connected a lot to our plan to beat cancer, and we're trying to have a new approach in any case of the EU health strategy. Especially when the pandemic started, we decided to coordinate and harmonize a bit more our policies. And the new approach includes early detection or prevention, of course, and then the proper diagnosis, treatment, care, and as you heard several times in Europe, quality of life, it's one of our priorities. So one of the main targets of this plan is to reduce from 25% to 5% tobacco users by 2040. This probably would follow a phase out period of time, which means that we also will explore the novel products and we will see what is less harmful and how we can move to this target. So the novel products will be examined more specifically. We will also check the packaging again. You know that we have a discussion about banning the flavors and also how advertisement should or shouldn't continue. This means there will be the revision of the tobacco taxation directive. It's expected actually now, these days, and also the tobacco products directive. This is expected by the end of the mandate, so by 2024, 25. For the issues that I mentioned. So I think we will have enough data then to decide also in which direction we're going to move. And also by 2023, we expect the Council recommendations on smoke-free environments to be updated. This means to extend the coverage for emerging products and smoke-free outdoor spaces. And two more things is the extension of the EU track and trace system to all tobacco products by 2024 and the revision of the legal framework on cross-border purchases of tobacco by private individuals by 2025. This comes in parallel with the financial instruments now that we have, like the EU4Health program, to provide 4 billion of euros to member states to improve their health systems. And one of these priorities and of the mission on cancer under the Horizon Europe is the research on tobacco consumption. So it's one of our main priorities. I think the title basically that we are discussing is also how we are driven by data and scientific data. I'm chairing the Science and Technology Committee, and we don't try to direct legislation. We don't try to tell my colleagues how to legislate. What we try to do is to give them options so that they can decide based on scientific data and not just on the news or non-verified sources. So this means we conduct several studies, and of course the convergence with new technologies, when digitalization, artificial intelligence, hypercomputers, they help us to have more data in these studies. This helps us a lot, of course, to not only to understand but also to harmonize a bit our approach. I will give you one example. The new products we saw, for example, the IQOS of the tobacco industry. It already seems that from the data that we have, that it's less harmful, and also that it becomes kind of like a more digitalized form of a habit, and the data that they can extract from the use could be very useful for all these initiatives that I'm talking about and the revision of the directives. This means this doesn't mean, of course, that we talk about all the novel products. Some could be considered still harmful or similar to the tobacco. So this could mean also same taxation rules. But again, this will be based on scientific data that we will try to have in our hands before we conclude. I also think that it's very important to be able to participate in such discussions, because it usually I've seen this let's say less favorable position to discuss about things that we cannot easily maybe not understand but also promote. So it's very difficult for politicians to enter this discussion, because initially tobacco for us is considered to be harmful. And it's also very difficult to consider the transition phase of less harmful products when our target is to be tobacco free. But this is what the new studies and scientific data has to achieve, and we have to participate more in discussions with scientists, to be open-minded and listen, and also to understand that we cannot avoid seeing that we have 25% of tobacco users. This means we have to be able to explore all the solutions before we move to any kind of banning initiatives. I think that this would be my initial points. I don't want to move into the study of the health issues now, but maybe a bit later. I would also like to thank Lina Nikolapoulou for inviting me here, and you for organizing and the presentation that you showed us. So I'm willing to participate in the discussion further down the listening also to the rest of the speakers.
Thank you very much. Professor Clemente, any comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this panel, which is a very interesting panel. And answering your first question related with should Europe follow the FDA example, I will say yes, we should follow. I have a package of information concerning the most of all these questions about FDA. If you allow me, I can read very quickly all this information. Okay. Mr. Chairman and remaining colleagues of this panel, it's with great pleasure that I'm participating in this fourth scientific summit on tobacco harm reduction. And I take this opportunity to thank you the invitation by the organizing committee and to have the possibility to talk about science and political decisions related with tobacco consumption. I'm a retired full professor of otorhinolaryngology, as you have said, at the Porto University School of Medicine, Portugal, trained in America at the Boston University School of Medicine, 1972-77, long time ago, and being in medical practice for almost 5 decades. As an otorhinolaryngologist and head and neck surgeon, I did take care of a great number of patients in my country throughout my life. During the last decade of the past century, in the years 1993, as a former president of the Portuguese National Council for Tobacco Smoking Prevention for more than 10 years, national representative of the European Smoking Prevention Network, ENSP, and invited European experts on the Comité Scientifique et Technique du Fundo Communautaire du Tabac for 3 years. I have always been a strong supporter of appropriate regulations following international rules and guidelines of the European Commission, WHO. At that time, I was concentrated on smoke prevention and control, promoting numerous initiatives, including national and European projects, particularly among young people and pregnant women. During that time, I was the advisor of some Portuguese health organizations and related and politicians work in these organizations related with tobacco smoking. Although smoking prevention and cessation have reduced the number of smokers, my knowledge and clinical experience have shown that these policies alone are not sufficient to prevent the onset of smoking-related diseases and mortality rate caused by this addiction. Nowadays, decades of research support the efficacy of harm reduction initiatives in society, reducing risks, behaviors, helping people decreasing or stopping these risks, and more important, saving lives in some other areas. A worldwide number of public health experts and clinicians like myself believe in harm reduction as a complementary policy to smoke prevention and cessation. With all this data, we should keep the politicians well informed about these developments and technology innovations, so they should be able to take the most correct decisions, legal measures, and policy recommendations. We should have a team approach for the politicians, like we have seen in this pandemic crisis, with new scientific information, new concept of smoking, and new relationship with tobacco industry, health professions, and consumers. This is my philosophy. Public health policies should be based on science, as you have read about and talking about my colleague. Not only give an answer, but delivering a choice that should be always aligned with scientific evidence. According to WHO, the best way for smokers is to stop smoking, which is correct. But quitting is not easy. We all know it's not easy. When millions of adults, informed smokers, have failed after many attempts with or without medical assistance. Particularly for these cases, we have to do something. and not keeping our arms crossed, but looking into novel products as new alternatives for smoking and harm reduction as a strategy to decrease the morbidity and mortality of tobacco smoking. In my opinion, the precautionary principle that has been advocated by some policymakers, referring that they don't have long-term results, it does not make any sense to me when we do have available recent toxicological studies which show a significant reduction in polluting agents and less biological effects of these products. To contest the WHO intransigent position, it's necessary that policymakers evaluate the reduced risks solutions that already exist in the market, contribute for more informed decisions, and deliver the right message to the politicians based on science. Furthermore, I would like to recognize the leading role of FDA in July 2020, as you have said, with the marketing authorization for the modified risk tobacco product, which is the first electronic product, a tobacco eating system at the American regulatory agency, following the analysis of the available and very extensive scientific evidence. The tobacco eating system eats tobacco, but not burns it, reducing significantly the production of harmful and potential toxic chemicals as combustion does. This is according with our knowledge that we have learned from the discipline of physics during the high school long time ago. The difference between eating and combustion is very important. So you understand very well how important is the eating system. Also, independent scientific studies familiar to everyone interested on this subject have shown that switching completely from the conventional cigarettes to this tobacco eating system reduces the body exposure to harmful products. I do consider the authorization given by FDA related with tobacco eating system a landmark in the history of tobacco consumption because it recognizes science role and the right for the adult smokers to be fully informed about different risks if they choose to continue smoking, even after failed attempts to quit smoking or to switch to other options, like eat tobacco products with less harmful effects. Considering all this information, it's my duty to say that novel products of tobacco use need further attention and evaluation and harm reduction. Despite not eliminating completely the risk, may support the prevention of non-communicable disease and cancer by reducing the risks and harms associated with it. This situation may influence regulatory policies and political decisions and may contribute to select options and other choices for the population. According to my previous experience on tobacco smoking prevention, and nowadays I'm in favor of the harm reduction. I do believe that we should put smokers at the core of our solutions, as we physicians place our patients at the core of our actions. The same concept should be applied to the regulators and politicians, making choices based on science that will improve public health with a sustainable progress. For all these reasons, the contribution of SCORE and its members is very important. And since we are located in Europe, the role of the European Union should be stimulated. In the past, there was meetings at the European Commission supporting smoking prevention, 1996, smoking cessation, 2006, and some European smoking campaigns that I did participate with great enthusiasm. Now, it's the right time to discuss harm reduction and its impact on tobacco smoking, and the European Commission can be the perfect location. Finally, I'm convinced that all of us will do everything we can to help the board members to organize this suggested meeting in Brussels, like we did with tobacco smoking and also cessation, smoking cessation.
Thank you very much, Professor. Really deep approach on this. Dr. Kaili, before turning the speech to Professor Toldy, they say that politics is the art of feasible things, of being able to do things that are feasible. The doctors and the scientists who believe in harm reduction, they also try to do the feasible, because we all know that the perfect would be to be in a smokeless world and nobody would be smoking. But smoking is here, it's sold legally, it's addictive, people get addicted, and not all of them have the capacity to stop it, either due to psychological or due to biological reasons. We know that there are people with genes which have a very low percentage of stopping smoking, because this addiction is really big for them. And harm reduction, at least in medicine, is a really new concept, in the sense that who is pro for harm reduction is by advising a patient to do something harmful. There's no doubt that all these products are harmful, but much less harmful from what he's using now. And I think that's a completely different approach that would be quite interesting to see regulatory, how it will be handled, because I believe in the same way that EMA was very important for European patients. I mean, having EMA, a central authorization, a project by which each new drug that comes in Europe passes a central part in the EU, which gets the permission to be in every country. In the same way, I believe it would be quite interesting to have European Union regulate if there should be claims, who can have them, what claims, or if everything that certain products say that they really offer is non-scientifically based. Do you believe it would be important to have a centralized part as FDA is in the United States?
So it's a very interesting question. Let me say, first of all, that we have an ongoing discussion now in the Parliament. I'm not directly working on the file, but I'm aware of the work that has been done. In this file, basically, the Parliament is preparing an opinion on the Commission's beating cancer plan, which this opinion, of course, is not binding. All the plan will not be binding, but they will set the roadmap for the legislative process that will unfold, as I mentioned, between 21 and 25. In this opinion, again, I would say that it's very interesting because we have different approaches from the parties, but also we have different approaches inside the parties. And we are trying to balance how we can talk about harm reduction of what you're basically mentioning, with not favoring different products to continue having a tobacco option, let's say. So basically what we want to do is to create a transitional phase when it's not possible, of course, to be able to move to less harmful products, but towards a zero, as I said, a free tobacco policy target. And this is quite challenging because you can very easily either have a separate, let's say, file, so to treat them in a different way. then you can create more favorable products that they are still harmful. Or you can completely, let's say, avoid to discuss about this transitional phase, and also avoid reducing the harm. This is something that's being discussed based on scientific data. So what we would expect, because I know that US has recently, I think, gave special permissions in specific products, not all of them together. So it's not treating each product in the same way as novel products or as tobacco products. I think it will be very interesting for us also to base our research on the scientific data and on the European authorities that they are dealing with these products, and try to, at least there is a discussion also of being able to have the same approach among member states. I think it would be very important, because if we base everything on the latest scientific knowledge, we would create a more safe approach for us. And also it would be very interesting to have a continued assessment and an evaluation of the risks vis-a-vis tobacco products, of the novel products. But also to make sure there will be no different approaches among the member states. This would also, let's say, make sure that there will be legal certainty for the companies, because we have to make sure that the businesses and the jobs are safe in this case, and they understand how the industry will have to evolve. So I believe that it's a very modest approach, and I don't know if delaying is a good thing or a bad thing, but at least we are gathering scientific data, and it would be very interesting to see how FDA made this assessment. So if you have more to share in this case, this would also be very interesting for us, because, as I said, the target is for 2040 to be able to have better results, but still it would be very interesting that the opinion on electronic cigarettes we had issued in April 2021, it concluded that there is growing evidence from human data suggesting that electronic cigarettes have harmful health effects, but not limited to the cardiovascular system. So policies should ideally be technology neutral. Beyond comparing one solution to another, our legislation must take into account the overall health impact of any given technology can have, to ensure that Europeans will benefit from the highest level of protection. So since these new technologies are allowing us to make significant breakthroughs in the health sector, from faster and better diagnosis to develop and test new approaches, I think it would be very interesting to be open-minded and let's say unbundle all this plan until 2025 by also listening to you and participating again in these discussions.
Thank you very much. Do we have Professor Toldy-Schedel Emil with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm sorry, there is an accident on the motorway, so I am on the motorway in a traffic jam, so maybe it's not always clear what I would like to talk. And my presentation is somewhere in the hospital, so I'm 20 kilometers from the hospital in this moment. Oh, so I will be very briefly, if it is possible.
Please.
We are waiting for a European regulation. This is one of the facts, because all the large regulation systems helpful for the health field and also helpful for the local state fields. That's one key point. The other one, we have to divide the ideas of the local regulations, because it belongs from parties, politics, and tax regulations. And the other hand is the medical issues, the health issues. What we saw in Hungary or in the Central and Eastern European region that the state usually has not enough medical knowledge to create good or bad, but decisions or regulations if something new challenge is coming. This is why, as medical persons, try to make the new evidence and new data to the local governments and to the government field, because it's need to make a good decision. This is one thing. This is what we try to do as medical doctors or health reduction professionals. The other one, what we deal is an ethical issue, and especially in Hungary, because more than 2 million people are smoking actively. We think we have no time to wait for the European regulation. We have to give advice from the government with clear papers that there is a lot of people who cannot quit smoking because of nicotine, because of dependency. And the nice idea in the future, not smoking world, but how we see it needs a lot of years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so generation. It means that we have to give a kind of solutions for that generations who are who has nicotine dependency. And because of the COVID time in the last 1.5 years, we mostly focused on COVID, and we have a lot of problems to thinking about the cardiovascular disease, to prevent the new cardiovascular disease. We have some problems to prevent the new cancer or to recognize the cancer patients. I think this is a good time to thinking about and focusing for harm reduction too. So this is our advice for the politicians, and I know this is a medical advice. And the other hand is a regulatory advice in locally, which is not easy in Hungary, because in the next March there will be an election. So that's everything is much more important than the smoking and harm reduction and smoking IDs. But ethically, we think we have to change something, and this is what we are trying to do in this moment from a medical field. Briefly, that's my idea in this field. I hope you heard me, because it's some ambulance cars around me, so maybe it's not easy to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We heard you perfectly. I think there is a global, let's say, common point to all doctors, that being able to have a central regulation would be really good and important. This is something that we hope the European Union will go forward on this. What about the beat cancer plan? Dr. Kaili, what do you believe?
Can you repeat the question, because I didn't hear you?
Sorry, about the beat cancer plan. Why do you think there is tobacco harm reduction is missing? I understand absolutely the need for a tobacco-free world, and this is something everybody agrees. But since we are not able to succeed today, and cancer is today, why do you think, I mean, you didn't create the document, but just your opinion. Why are we so negative on this part? I mean, take another product, snus. It's only in Sweden allowed. All the rest of EU is banned, but still it's a product by which we have data that it's less harmful. And this is since decades. What do you think about this? Do you think Europe should be aggressive enough from the health point of view to start discussing about harm reduction?
So as I mentioned, although it's missing from the beating cancer plan, it's just an initial draft that is in the parliament, and we have more than 1,000 amendments actually that MEPs have submitted last week. And harm reduction is mentioned, not from me because as I said, I'm not in this committee, but it was mentioned in these amendments. And as I said, what is it's not mentioned explicitly, perhaps, but they do tackle these products. So I believe that in the end, you will see that it will show how the parliament wants to proceed. What we acknowledge is that we need additional research and scientific data, and they are, as I mentioned before, they are always welcome to improve legislation. So this is an initial file preparing and not being, it's not going to be enforced, just gonna complement or let's say prepare what we're expecting to do in the whole files around tobacco until 2025. So the specific proposals will be revised in the framework of the beating cancer plan until then. So we're just now working on this Parliament's opinion, and I think it's actually calling for continuation of evaluations of health risks related to cigarettes and the establishment of a list of substances that are contained in the EU market. I think this is also essential because we cannot put all the products in the same basket. We have to be able to understand the differences. And as I mentioned, there are growing evidence was mentioned in the opinion that was published in 2021 from the Commission. But this is not sufficient evidence, I suppose. So we understand the harmful health effects, but it's very difficult to talk about the percentage, how less or how more it is. So hopefully, ideally, we should remain tech neutral and based on scientific data are the decisions. Also, I think that since we do have data, but it has also been difficult to use those data, I think in parallel with this discussion, we are also having ahead of us the Data Act, which means we will be able to share data in a safe way. And I think this will help us also to improve our decision making. Still, what we need to accomplish is to have a safe and trustworthy evolution for these technologies and make sure that citizens will understand their options and the consequences. So if you know of any studies that they have also applied AI or like these new technologies into providing us with some better understanding, I'd be happy to receive that. And since, as I said, it's an ongoing discussion.
Thank you very much. Professor Clemente, one question. Have you read the WHO report 2021 about harm reduction? Have you seen this paper that came out? And if you would have any comments on that. What I'm surprised, let's say, is that they recognize that we do have studies that heat-not-burn products have less harm. There is a negative comment on the fact that most studies are from industry. Independent studies, in the majority, at least as far as my knowledge is, confirm what we already know. The European Respiratory Society refuses to take any funds, even independently from tobacco-related industry, to make their own studies. How do you think we will proceed? What is your opinion? Everybody's asking for more data, but somebody has to pay for this data to be produced.
This is a very interesting question, and I thank you for your question. We have to take into consideration the recommendation from WHO. I don't want to go into details on that because I'm familiar with all this information that you were talking about. But I must say that they are delaying the discussion of the harmful reductions. We all know that harmful reduction is the third pillar of smoking prevention. Number 2, cessation. And number 3 is harm reduction. We have to do something, and WHO should recognize in the future that they are wrong and they need to, I can see you are smiling. That means that you know what you are talking about and you know what I think about that, as we physicians and clinicians know about that. It's important that we cannot be, as I stated in my report, arms crossed. We have to do something for those patients that they cannot, there is no, all of us know patients, because as you know, smoking tobacco is a chronic disorder, and patients that even after many attempts, failed attempts, they cannot stop smoking. They cannot quit smoking. And we need to do something else. We need to have new alternatives. We need to have new products. And it seems for me that these products, like with less harmful effects and less risky products, are better. Everybody can recognize that. Even there is a combustion, even there is an eating effect, there's a big difference, as you know very well. And it's interesting to know that in the past, there was some information concerning difference between combustion and eating. This is long time I learned in my high school. There is a big difference, as you know very well. But people keep talking about, and even some European Respiratory Society, I can say that very easily because I'm retired and I can comment on that. Even the respiratory societies will say, well, we have to be very careful. Well, we don't have enough scientific evidence. Well, we need some more data. Data. That's why we are in Europe. Europe is always delayed according with the United States. In the United States, I spent 5 years in Boston, as you know, and the FDA for me is the perfect example. We can try, we can be confident, we can know that the FDA is a perfect example. They are doing everything they can to review the reports, to get exhaustive information concerning the harmful policy for harm reduction for policy. And this is important. So in my opinion, to conclude, I should say that the future is on this last policy and last recommendation. And I like to hear what the other doctor was saying, Dr. Eva Kaili. She said that they are only thinking about now about harm reduction. They need more data. And it's the European style every time. More data, more data, more data. And we need to go fast, as my other colleague from Hungary stated, that we need to go fast. We cannot wait so many years because 25 will be too late and a lot of people died. We have to look into these patients. We have to go now. Now that's time to do something to fight against this pandemic crisis, which is smoking. And in my opinion, the harmful reduction is the future in 2021 at this time.
Thank you, Professor Clemente. Professor Toldi, any comment on this?
Yes, thank you. Actually, theoretically, I completely agree that we have to be independent financial background for the studies. What we can do now is we can make small studies for some interesting questions based on our private financial background. We can make a little bit bigger studies based of the financial background of the universities or scientific centers. But actually, we would like to see a facility to propose financial background for large studies, because we all believe in large studies. So we use the evidence-based medicines in the last 20 years. It means that it can be much more elegant to find European Union money to get information about the harm reduction and all these kind of fields. But in this moment, I cannot see this financial background. So I can agree with WHO, but theoretically, but in this moment, I did not see any other chance. And as Professor told us, we need datas. We need datas, and we need datas now, because there is a lot of people who will have cardiovascular disease, who will have lung disease, cancer, and we have no time, actually. So in this moment, it's a dual thing. We need data, and for the good data, we need financial background. In this moment, I cannot see financial background, large amount of financial background, which is needed for the data, only from the industrial field. Thank you.
Thank you. And a last short comment from everybody before closing to a final question. Each time we want a new drug on the market, EMA, FDA, everybody asks them to pay for a study. They need to pay to create a study that answers the question, and then EMA takes the data, examines, and gives authorization or not. We need data, we need money. What would you think about an institutional part, EU, EMA, somebody asking the tobacco industry, in order to be able to continue to sell their products, to fund an independent entity that will make a large study on harm reduction and on with no influence on the conduct of it? Short comment from everybody. Professor Clemente?
Well, we all know that we need independent studies. It's very important, independent studies. We can, although the tobacco industry has changed a lot in the last years, they have compassion. Patients are dying. And that's why we see that they are doing good studies, but they are paid by tobacco industry. So we need tobacco independent studies. And I believe that the European Commission has, in the years, during the last century, the end of the last century, they have spent a lot of money in the campaigns, European campaigns, which I was a member. As you know, feel free to say no, and also the campaign help. And my question is very simple. Instead of using that money in the campaigns to say that tobacco is a bad thing, why not give him money and donate money to an institute so they can use this money, this institute, for a large, big, independent study related with harm reduction?
Thank you very much, Professor Schedel. A last very short comment, please. We don't have him. Dr. Kaili, will we have the pleasure to hear you closing the session? We're in the last minute. Any last comment?
Well, I would say that since we have opened such a discussion, I believe that you're right. We definitely need an independent study, a big study, because also the cost to prove clinical studies and to provide the scientific data to the authorities is not cheap, is not easy. So still it's the industry, tobacco industry, that moves in this direction. So it would be great if they could join forces in order to provide us with an independent study. And I have to say, to balance this, that governments also should be aware, and as politicians, that our actions, if we don't make alternatives or options possible, they could also serve to keep smokers using and smoking traditional products that be indeed more harmful. So what I would say is we need studies and we need to be open into alternatives, but based on scientific data, we have to give options to citizens mainly, so that they acknowledge also the issues and the concerns. Because there was, for example, I will just mention one study that a similar product that is not considered smoking, an e-cigarette, could also represent a gateway among never smokers, so to attract people to test it, as it's considered to be not or less harmful. So we have to be very careful. So Dr. Clemente, I would say that we need to be able to be balanced here and not to rush. Europe sometimes delays, but this doesn't mean that we do it. We allow harmful products to be out there. We're trying to be able to provide directions that they are based on science in order to change the current status. So I think independent studies are more than welcomed. We also try to be updated constantly. If there would be, and these products already exist in the European market, so if there would be a specific need, or if you would have something more important for us, we are always open to take this under consideration. As I said, currently now we are amending this first file before the rest of the legislative procedure arrives in the Parliament.
I would like all of you to thank you very much. I hope it was a very interesting question to everybody. At least I enjoyed a lot. I would like to thank a lot Dr. Kaili, Professor Clemente, and Professor Toldy-Schedel Emil for their time, their energy, and their input to this discussion. Thank you very much, and we will proceed to the next section.